Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. Do you want to know how bad Bidenomics really is? Well, check this out. Russia's economy is now growing faster than the U.S. and all other top global economies are, according to the International Monetary Fund. And they've been facing the full brunt of Western sanctions, sabotage, and war through the corrupt D.C. puppet state of Ukraine. So what does that say about us? Now, before you counter me, I know the power wartime economies can have. Just check out how World War II finally ended the Great Depression we were suffering from at home at the time. But I think that's a different story than what Russia, an already weak economy, is dealing with. Moscow isn't coming to the rescue of other nations by revving up its manufacturing capacity. It's taking hits by the aforementioned sanctions, sabotage in reference to what happened to the Nord Stream pipeline, and then war targeted at its economy by all the most powerful nations. I don't take this to be some kind of apologia for Mother Russia or something. What I'm trying to drive home here is how weak the U.S. has become under decades of leadership under neoliberal and neoconservative establishment parasites, which has culminated under Biden's puppet reign. In the report that the IMF put out this week, Russia is expected to grow its economy by 3.2% this year, whereas the U.S. is only expected to grow 2.7%. It only gets worse from there as Japan is expected to grow its economy by only 0.9%, the UK by 0.5%, and Germany a sad, measly mere 0.2%. Business Insider explains the surge, quote, "The surge in growth rate has been linked to the effects of high investment and robust private consumption, buoyed by wage growth in a tight labor market, though the IMF said it expects these effects to taper off in 2025 with a growth rate of 1.8%. The forecast is a wake-up call for Western countries that have hoped to throttle Russia's economy with sanctions to make its war in Ukraine unsustainable. Growth at that level would back up Vladimir Putin's claims that Russia's economy has withstood the most dire effects of Western sanctions and trade restrictions. Meanwhile, as foreign companies leave Russia amid the war, Moscow has been accruing funds from fleeing firms, seizing $387 million as of mid-March. In its energy trade, sustained oil and commodity exports to major markets like India and China, alongside Russia's sidestepping of G7 countries' oil price cap, have enabled it to maintain strong energy exports. Russia's resilience against Western sanctions stems largely from its boundless alliance with China. Trade volume between the two countries surged to a record $240 billion last year, fueled in part by Beijing's appetite for essential Russian commodities that have been discounted amid the West's reluctance to trade with Moscow, end quote. And while we push Russia and China closer together despite their pre-existing grievances toward each other, which we should be exploiting, how have Americans fared, though, in this proxy war coming right off the heels of COVID, another massive calamity which robbed everyday Americans and transferred our wealth? Well, we talked a few weeks ago about reports of Americans being forced to eat cereal for dinner, not because they necessarily want to, but because the cost of food has risen so much with inflation. Well, now the National Gardening Association, using numbers derived from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, says that 43% of Americans are growing food at home, up from 33% just 5 years ago in 2019. Now, I'm sure part of that can be accounted for by new viral trends online to escape the big food, big pharma complex, where dangerous chemicals are added to all of our meals. But I'm also just as sure that another driving factor is just how dang expensive everything's become. And again, this is a good trend. People being healthier and more independent is a good thing. But what it says about our economy, though, I think that's a bad thing. Both of those takeaways can coexist together. Our next guest knows all about the dirty tricks our government plays with our money, in which they always seem to come out richer for it and we always seem to come out poorer for it. Joining us now to discuss is Joe Penland, the founder of the grassroots organization Joe from Texas. Joe, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Great. So you're a self-made man, very successful, and your organization is releasing a contract called the Contract from the American People, and it's for presidential candidates. So can you tell our audience what it entails?
Well, what we've done, we've picked out 10 things that we think are extremely important to America today. And obviously, a lot of it is the economy. The most of it is the debt that we're strangling with today, which has a big grip on inflation. And we put that together, and we've kind of patterned this after Newt Gingrich and the contract they had with America in the mid-90s. That worked real well, got him back in, they won the House, and they got a lot of things done with President Clinton.